So, have you ever wondered if the wellness habits that you're engaging in are truly helping your relationship with food or actually harming it? Well, if that's the question that you've been asking, this is definitely going to be the conversation for you because we're going to be talking all about how to tell the difference between wellness and disordered eating. So, thank you so much for jumping in here live with me. This is the first time I am testing a YouTube live. So, fingers crossed everything goes well. If not, we will be back here. I will be back here doing this again if it doesn't work out well. But for those who are brand new to me, let me make sure that I properly introduce myself. My name is Tanisha Campbell, and I am the founder of Enhanced Black Women's Health. I am very passionate about helping healthcare professionals create inclusive content that truly builds trust and reflects their values as they're working with their patients and their clients. And I'm very excited because today I released an interview with the Julie Duffy Dillon, who is a registered dietitian. She's also the author of Find Your Food Voice, this book, as well as the podcast. So if you want to learn more about the full interview we did today, go to ebwhcommunities.com. But I wanted to talk about this particular book today and the interview in the sense of thinking about some big takeaways that I took from the interview and some things that you might want to consider, whether you are a patient, whether you're a client, whether you are a healthcare provider yourself, is when we're thinking about finding our food voice, when we're thinking about how people can ensure that the habits they're engaging in are truly about wellness and not about just making themselves smaller or focusing on perfection or having all these different food rules that they believe that they must follow. So that really comes down to understanding the difference between the habits we're engaging are that are very wellness focused, overall wellness, improving our overall health and well-being and making sure that we have longevity and things that are more focused on diet culture and disordered eating and focusing exclusively on restriction and changing our bodies and in all these different things that aren't necessarily about health as much as they're about making ourselves smaller, making ourselves thin and fitting into this thin ideal. So that's why I wanted to really address this with three things to kind of consider, whether you're a provider, whether you're a patient, whether you're a client, is one of the big questions that I will often ask people to think about. This is for yourself, and you can feel free to comfort if you're comfortable to answer this inside the chat, you can. If not, just feel free to answer it for yourself. I always have a notebook around me because I'm a big journaler. So I always have a notebook around me. But whether you want to answer this in a chat or you want to answer this for yourself at home, or if you're a verbal processor, you can answer it aloud, is to think about, are your health choices really based on what feels good, or are they based on what you do, what feels earned? And what I mean by this, what feels good versus what feels earned, is when we're doing things that are more wellness focused, we're thinking about things like self-care. We're thinking about, how is this overall helping me, supporting me, getting me the rest and revitalization that I need. We're thinking about flexibility. We're being realistic and thinking about, what can we flexibly do, what can we sustainably do over a long period of time. Or we're thinking about curiosity. We're being curious to think about what foods make me feel good and what foods don't make me feel good. Therefore, we're not just sitting there cutting out a whole food group because somebody told us, some study said it didn't work for some people. Instead, we're saying, well, this food doesn't work for me, and this is why I'm choosing not to consume it. These products don't work for me, and that's why I'm choosing not to consume them or putting them on my body. Versus disordered eating, that goes into often focuses from a sense of fear. Often when I work with clients who have a past disordered eating history or a past eating disorder history, I notice that they often will fear eating certain types of food, bringing that back into their diet, especially if they've been very restrictive from eating those things and now they're considering putting them back in. There's often that fear that if I consume these things again, I'm going to have all the I'm going to go into all the bad habits I used to have, or I'm not going to feel well. So that's one place. But you also have this sense of control. For those of us who have fluctuated on the weight spectrum, for some of us, and I can say this for myself because I've been there, is that sometimes this sense of, if I control the things I eat, if I control my exercise, if I control my sleep, then I'm going to get this outcome. So it's this sense of control and this need for control because you're trying to get from here and you're assuming that all these things that used to work will always work over time. Not necessarily true, but that's a different conversation for a different day. And then you have sometimes this feeling of guilt and shame, which can be sometimes placed on friends and family members that may have said things to you in the past, may have said things to your patients and your clients in the past. This negative script that's often around can like push you toward this more focus on, I need to be perfect. I need to only do these things. I need to eat these things. I need to exercise this much. I need to sleep this much. I need to avoid this. I need to only consume these things. So when we think about this first point, one thing that often will really encourage people to consider is when you're making health choices, understanding that it's essential to really start with a deeper why. Why are you making these choices? It's not to sit there and say your choices are good or bad. You know what I mean? We can take the morality out of it, but understanding what's the deeper why behind it can be very helpful. The second point that I often really want to encourage people to think about is, do you feel like a failure when you are missing workouts or when you're not eating as healthy as you think you should be eating? And I say this because from a place of wellness, you can think about everything I'm doing as a behavior, right? So there's going to be seasons of my life where certain behaviors are going to be easier than others. If you are someone who's a first time parent and you're not sleeping and the baby's not sleeping and the baby's sick all the time, obviously you probably aren't going to sit there and be going to your 4 a.m. workouts. You're probably not going to be eating quote unquote 3 solid meals a day. Like, there's going to be seasons of your life where variety is going to be important. There's going to be seasons of your life where you're going to get more rest than others. And there's going to be seasons of your life where you're able to be comfortable with that reality and understanding that my overall well-being right now is centered on this little human that I need to take care of, and you know what I mean, and versus someone else who may be in a season of their life where they have all this time and all this space and they can do all the things that they want to do, right? So when we think about our wellness, it's understanding that there's going to be variety, there's going to be different circumstances that are going to determine our health outcomes, that are going to impact our health outcomes. Versus when you think of these disorder patterns, they become very fixated on rules. You must follow these rules, you must do these things, which you will notice when you start saying to yourself, or your clients or your patients start saying to themselves, must, need, and start using certain terminology. It's a sign that you are going into more of a disordered pattern and assuming that I need to do these quote unquote things to get to this quote unquote spot or this quote unquote place. So that's something to consider. It often might find yourself on the opposite spectrum of being like, I don't have time for my 4 a.m. workouts, to not only I'm doing my 4 a.m. workouts, but I need to do my noon workouts and I need to do the evening, Zumba class with the friends, with the girls. And you find yourself over exercising. You find yourself under eating. You find yourself doing all these things that are quote unquote performative. You're performing fitness, but it's not necessarily the true aspect of wellness because you're doing all these things, but it's not necessarily getting you to the ultimate goal that you want to have, nor is it actually as healthy as you think it is. It's not actually a health promoting habit, it's just a sense of rules and things that you feel obligated to do. And often that comes into this idea where we have this shame then, is that when we do quote unquote indulge ourselves, when we do go out and have that drink with the friends, go out and have that dinner, skip that workout, you start feeling that shame because you think I'm supposed to be doing all these things and I'm not doing them. So therefore I'm not good. So once again, you come back to the sense of morality, good and bad, right and wrong. And that's when I really encourage people to kind of think, when you find yourself feeling like you're failing at wellness, failing at health, it's really important to consider where that belief is coming from. Because sometimes that belief is internal. Sometimes that's internalized beliefs that we have held on to from variety of different childhood experiences. But sometimes those belief systems are often external. It's external beliefs, external thoughts that are seeping into your brain and making you think that this is the truth. And once again, we can go down a rabbit hole on that one, so I won't. But I really just want to encourage people to kind of think about, where is that belief coming from? And is that belief truly serving you toward wellness, or is that belief serving more diet culture and diet culture beliefs? And then the last point I want to talk about is, do you measure your health by a certain number, a certain level of progress, or how you truly feel, or how much progress you've made from where you were? And I always say this question because I don't want to necessarily say measure your health by the scale, because I think that's even so narrow of a belief, because sometimes it's not about a scale weight as much as it's about a way that you think you should look. And what I will say is that when you're thinking about wellness, you're thinking about that often from a place that's prioritizing your energy, it's prioritizing your mobility. Like, how am I able to move? Am I able to move better than I used to be able to move? Am I able to move at all? As somebody with rheumatoid arthritis, when I first got diagnosed, there were times where I went from being able to like go out on these extensive runs, like I was exercising sometimes 2 days, to moving toward I couldn't even go on a 5-minute walk with my dog without feeling exhausted, right? So thinking about mobility, thinking about your energy level, thinking about your mental health and well-being, how does that look? Because Often people will think about health from a very, very narrow focus, exercise, nutrition, and forget everything else. Forget about your sleep, forget about your stress, forget about your mental health, forget about your financial health. There's lots of aspects of health for us to consider. Versus when you're thinking about things from a more disordered way of feeling and existing, is often is a fixation, on our body shape, our weight, our body weights, I'm sorry, our shape, our size. It's often a focus on food purity, how healthy things are, how organic they are, how much pesticides they do or don't have. And and here's the thing. I'm not negating the importance of exercise, nor am I negating the importance of nutrition. I just want us to think a little bit more critically and openly about the fact of, are these things that you are focusing on, are they really about measuring your health? Are they really about looking at your health markers and improve? Because guess what? Maybe your health markers improved and your weight didn't move. And some people will still feel like they're a failure. So it's really understanding when you start seeing your health improve, but other factors that you think are supposed to improve aren't, and that's the thing that you're more upset about, that's where your fixation is. That is where your true why is there. There's a deeper reason why that you want to make these changes that aren't necessarily as focused on health as you think they are. And that's not a place of judgment, it's just a place of awareness and understanding when we're measuring our health by outcomes rather than the behaviors we're engaging in, it's a really good sign that health may not be the real goal that you're focused on. So in those instances, I really do encourage you, whether you're a provider, whether you're a patient, whether you're a client, and specifically if you're a provider for this particular question, is to ask yourself, how are the messages that you are reinforcing? Are they truly reinforcing wellness? Or are they unintentionally promoting more disordered behavior? And actually, maybe take a step back and say that this actually is applicable whether you're a healthcare provider or not, because you can reinforce harmful behaviors and be an influencer. You can enforce harmful behaviors and be a parent. So it doesn't really stop, just because you're not a provider, right? So those are just a couple things I wanted to talk about today. If you do have any comments, any thoughts about that, you can always post them in the comments below. I definitely highly recommend you head to ebwhcommunity.com and read the interview here with, our registered dietitian, Julie Duffy Dillon, all about her book, Find Your Food Voice. She has a lot of great conversations about, what we talked about today, but also dives really deep into it. This is just what I pulled from the conversation, and I wanted to just take a small nugget from it and have a conversation about it. But I really encourage you all to read this book. It's such a helpful book. It really does help us kind of understand how can we identify the things that are disconnecting us from ourselves. How can we find our food voice? How can we find and develop a healthier relationship with ourselves, not just with food, but with our overall selves. So great book. Highly recommend that you check it out. Thanks so much for watching this live. We will definitely make sure that we have more conversations with more colleagues that we're going to bring on here. I just wanted to, like I said, test this out because I have not live streamed on YouTube yet. So we'll see how this one comes out. And if it's good, we'll keep it. If it's not, we won't. But thanks so much. You can always go to ebwhcommunity.com, like I said, to sign up for our newsletter where we do interviews with amazing authors, interviews with other healthcare professionals, interviews. I have one coming up that I'm really excited about. I don't even actually want to spoil it. So I have a really good interview coming up next month too that I don't want to spoil because I'm very excited about the topic. But thanks so much. If there's any topic that you think we should cover on this channel, make sure that you drop it below or send me a direct message. I'm on Instagram most of the time and also on Substack as well. So thanks so much. Have a great day, and I will chat with you all soon. Bye. Okay, so let's see how this